$300. That's a pretty normal price for a round-trip flight across the country. And out of that $300, the airline, the brand painted on the tail, the name on your boarding pass, keeps about $12. 12, roughly the price of a Big Mac and a Coke. The industry that everybody assumes is quietly gouging them makes, on average, less than $8 of profit per passenger. So if the airline isn't keeping your $300, who is? Who reaches in between you and that seat, and how big a cut do they take? Pin your boarding pass to the top of the screen, because we're going to dock every cut as it happens. Everyone takes a cut. Let's find out who gets yours. Here's what you actually bought. A seat for a few hours on a machine that defies gravity. Simple idea, brutal business. Worldwide, airlines pull in around $1 trillion a year and hand almost all of it right back out in costs. 97 cents of every dollar gone before profit. It is one of the hardest ways to make money ever invented. People have joked for decades that the fastest way to become a millionaire is to start as a billionaire and buy an airline. So when you hand over $300, almost none of it is destined to stay with the airline. It's already promised to a long line of other people, and we're going to meet every one of them, starting with the most expensive thing on the plane, the fuel. An airplane is, fundamentally, a device for converting jet fuel into distance. And fuel is the single most volatile cost an airline has. When oil spikes, airlines bleed. When it drops, they breathe. On our $300 ticket, jet fuel is somewhere around $66, better than a fifth of your fare just to fill the tanks. By IATA's numbers, fuel is roughly a third of the entire industry's costs. That's why airlines obsess over it. They fly at specific speeds to sip less of it. They bolt little wingtips on to save it. They hedge it on futures markets like a commodities desk. $66 of your ticket is, quite literally, going up in smoke behind the engines. And the airline hasn't paid a single human being yet. Now, the people. Somebody has to fly the plane, run the cabin, load the bags, fix the engines, staff the gate, and direct the whole operation. And aviation labor is expensive, specialized, and heavily unionized, for good reason. You want the person flying you to be very well trained and very well paid. Add up the pilots, the flight attendants, the ground crews, the mechanics, the schedulers, and labor is the biggest single slice of your ticket, roughly $75 of your $300. A full quarter of the fare is just the humans it takes to get you safely from one city to another. So between fuel and people, we're already at about $140, nearly half your ticket, and we still haven't paid for the actual airplane. Speaking of which, the airplane. A new Boeing or Airbus runs well over $100 million. But here's the thing almost nobody realizes. The airline usually doesn't own it. A huge share of the world's jets are leased from aircraft leasing giants, companies like AerCap, that you've never heard of, but that quietly own the planes you fly on. So the airline makes something like a monthly car payment on a $100 million jet, plus the maintenance to keep it certified and safe. The checks, the parts, the mechanics' hours. Bundle the lease, the depreciation, and the upkeep, and the aircraft itself is about $48 of your ticket. You paid to rent a seat on a plane the airline is also renting. It's renting all the way down. Your plane also can't just land anywhere for free. Every time it touches down, the airline pays the airport. Landing fees, gate rent, the cost of the terminal you walked through, the jet bridge that clamped onto the door. And up in the sky, the whole ballet of keeping thousands of planes from hitting each other. Air traffic control costs money too. Add the airports and the controllers together, and that's about $21 of your $300. It's not the biggest slice, but it's the one you physically stand inside. The terminal, the runway, the tower. $21 to use the ground and the sky. Now the part everybody loves to complain about. Taxes and fees. And they are real. The federal government charges a 7.5% excise tax on your fare. There's a passenger facility charge, up to $4.50 per airport to fund terminals. There's a $5.60 TSA security fee each way for the privilege of taking your shoes off. There's a flight segment tax on top. Stack 'em up and government taxes and fees are about $45 of your $300 ticket, around 15%, which is a lot. But here's the thing the complaining misses. It's still smaller than the fuel and smaller than the crew. The taxes are not the reason your ticket is expensive. They're just the most visible line on the receipt, the one with a name you recognize. And before the airline sees a cent, there's one more group with their hand out: the middlemen who sold you the ticket. The global distribution systems, Sabre, Amadeus, the pipes that connect airlines to travel agents, the online agencies, Expedia and Booking, if you went through them, and the credit card network that processed your payment and skimmed its percentage. Together, Booking and cards take about $33. So let's lay out the whole receipt. Out of 300, 66 for fuel, 75 for the crew, 48 for the plane, 21 for airports and control, 45 for taxes, 33 for the booking middlemen. Add it all up, and what's left for the airline? The company whose entire brand is on this transaction is about $12. $12 out of 300. The airline keeps about 4%, roughly a Big Mac, for the enormous, capital-intensive, terrifyingly complex job of safely flying you across the country. Everything else, the other 96%, went to fuel, people, the plane, the airports, the government, and the middlemen. So sit with the obvious question: how on earth does a business survive on $12 a passenger? How do airlines, which keep getting bigger and buying back their own stock, make any real money at all? Because here's the secret: they don't make it flying you. Not really. The flight is almost a loss leader. The real money is somewhere you'd never think to look: in your wallet, on a piece of plastic. Watch what happens when you put the airline's two businesses side by side. Flying you, a 4% margin, $12, at the mercy of fuel prices and weather and a government shutdown. But selling miles? That's a different animal. Airlines create frequent flyer miles essentially out of thin air, and then sell those miles in bulk to your credit card company. The bank hands them to you as rewards every time you swipe. And the margin on selling miles is enormous, north of 50%, because a mile costs the airline almost nothing to print. One business is a brutal, low-margin slog through the sky. The other is conjuring loyalty points and selling them to a bank. Guess which one the airline actually cares about? Here are the numbers that reframe everything. Delta takes in around $6.8 billion a year from American Express, just for the SkyMiles credit card. American Airlines pulls more than $5 billion from its card partners. Delta's loyalty program, on its own, has been valued at almost $32 billion, which is sometimes more than the entire airline is worth. And the punchline? Selling miles swung Delta from a negative operating margin to plus 10%. According to the reporting, not a single one of the big U.S. airlines would have turned a profit in 2024 without the money from credit cards. Let that land. The flying loses money or barely breaks even. The profit comes from the plastic in your pocket. The airline isn't really a company that flies planes. It's a bank that happens to own some. So here's your receipt, fully itemized at last. Out of $300 for a flight, $66 to jet fuel, $75 to the crew, $48 to the airplane the airline doesn't even own, $21 to the airports and the control towers, $45 to the government, $33 to the booking middlemen and the card networks, and $12, a Big Mac, to the airline whose name is on your ticket. The seat was almost a favor. The real product was the miles you earned, sold to a bank while you weren't looking. That's the cut. Now you know who gets yours.